Welcome, everybody. My name is Trina Silvers with the Truth Action Project, and we're welcoming you to our Campfire chat tonight. I am joined by fellow board members Matt Van Slyke and Michael Zarazano. So we will be happy to have our discussion tonight following our Tuesday forum. So thank you, everybody, for joining in tonight. Would like to just give everyone an opportunity to speak tonight. So if you would like to, just raise your hand and get in queue to join whenever you'd like. Mike, go ahead and take it away for us.
All right, welcome everyone. This is the Friday night Campfire, and it's election integrity follow-up from our Tuesday night forum. And basically, we have a situation where in the United States, we have two groups of people that have two opposing viewpoints on the election outcome. Some believe it was accurate and honest and true, and the other side believes it wasn't. And we really have an enigma. We have a problem, and we really need to try to put our heads together and communicate in a very civil manner to try to solve this problem. And we don't even have a consensus among the two parties if there is any problem. And there is no unity on that issue whatsoever. And this just can't be. And we really need to figure this out and break through this barrier. We have a barrier, a brick wall, and the confidence in our country depends upon the election system. And if we have no confidence, then in the years ahead, you're going to see a big drop off in participation. And that's going to give a very unbalanced look and feel for the election system. People will not want to participate, and it will grow increasingly. So I would like to just open it up and for any criticism, for any ideas. Yeah, John, go ahead.
Well, it seems to me that possibly both sides are right. There probably was some fraud, but maybe not enough to overturn the result. I mean, that seems like a middle ground that might be true.
Well, let me just try to be objective in this observation as much as I can, with all due respect and openness. I am a conservative Republican, and I personally feel the election was stolen, as do most of my fellow Republicans. So I'm just going to kind of right out of the chute here say this, that when we look at the evidence, when we look at the meetings that these two men had during their candidacy, during their campaigns, we had record-breaking attendance by the Trump campaign. We had multiple records broken in many ways. 10,000 more votes were achieved by Trump than was achieved by Biden. I mean, Obama, rather, forgive me. And when you look at this kind of evidence, it just doesn't speak to what happened. When Mr. Biden was, holding his campaign meetings, there were very few people. The morale was low.
Agreed.
Yeah, so it causes great alarm. How can a man with dismal attendance at his campaign stops be able to win an election with a man that broke records and was a rock star? I mean, he was.
Mike, I'd like to jump. Can I jump in?
Yeah, whether you like Donald Trump or not, the guy was fabulously popular, rock star type material. Go ahead, Trina.
Yeah, thank you. I just was wanting to circle it off of even the 2020 election, or because I noticed that Nancy just joined us. One of my oh, she dropped off. Hopefully, she comes back on. It looks like she was having some audio problems. But she and I met back in 2012 during the Ron Paul campaign when he was running on the Republican ticket. And I was watching a video that showed of the audience at the Tampa Convention Center for the Republican conference. They had a teleprompter up where they were scripting the words that were being said by the people on the stage. And there was a guy standing behind the teleprompter recording the event. And it said clearly on the teleprompter that I can't remember now, it was back in 2012, but it was either the ayes have it or the nays have it. And it was just exactly the opposite of what the entire crowd was chanting. The volume was loud in the convention center, and it was a clear indication that the people said one thing, but the teleprompter came up and said another. Now that is just one example of how elections and candidates have been hidden from view. Ron Paul was also this rock star quality that you were describing. He had the Ron Paul blimp. He had the young people on his side. I mean, I couldn't believe the campaigns that were unleashed on this man. And he was so well hidden in 2008. I didn't even know he was running. So that's when I jumped on board in 2012 and saw what happened with my own eyes at that Republican National Convention back in 2012. So the problems with our elections go way back farther than even 2020. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that this is indeed a nonpartisan event, and we're not here to debate whether Trump did or did not win, although the jury is still out. As Mike said, both sides of the country end up feeling that they're not being heard. The problem that I see in our country is we have two sides of the country, and we're so divided in where we stand on the political spectrum. Half of the time, one party's happy. Half the time, the other party's not happy. And what I feel America should be about, we truly are the country of freedom, and we truly are about individual sovereign rights. Everyone should have the ability to be happy all times, not just every other 4 years. Go ahead, John. That's what I have to add.
Okay, yeah. Well, and of course, we all saw what happened to Bernie, who was enormously popular, and the Democrats really screwed him over every which way to deny him the nomination. I mean, and gave it to Hillary. I wouldn't support Hillary at all. I mean, she's a disaster every which way. But replying to Mike, I think it was not everybody would recognize that Biden had virtually no popularity, and his so-called victory over Bernie was manufactured. So that was a huge amount of corruption and distortion and invalid. But the other thing is, a lot of people really didn't like Trump either. So it was like, which one do you hate the least? Do you hate Trump more than Biden, or do you hate Biden more than Trump? So it was not so much in favor of Biden, but it was anti-Trump that I think pushed him over the top. So I call him Mr. Awful and Mr. Terrible. So I'm it's like, would you rather be hanged or shot? That's my perspective, and my answer is no. Walk away. Anyway, I'll let somebody else talk from there.
Yeah, it always seems like we're in the boat of the lesser of two evils are we going to choose? And we really aren't being even given, as one of the greatest countries in the world, as we're touted, we're not even really given good candidacies for the leader of the free world. So there's that problem. welcome to everybody that's just come in to join us this evening. See a few new people coming in. Thank you for being here. Nancy, I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about, if you want, when you had lost your connection.
I hope I can figure it out.
Yeah, I mentioned how you and I had met back in 2011, 2012 during the Ron Paul days. So you want to go ahead and talk about your experiences? I just got to catch up on the chat here. If you can talk, Nancy.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to figure this out.
And we just see
So-
the very top of your head. So you might want to adjust the area. That's better.
Yeah, I'll hold up the phone.
Yes, much better,
There you go.
Nancy.
So I don't even remember how I found out about Watch the Vote. I joined and I don't know, I guess I was probably one of the first ones to join the group. And Jim was looking for members to be admins for the group. So I was kind of like an admin. I approved people to join the group. But my experience in Illinois at the delegate convention in Illinois, well, first of all, I met with the Palatine, what we were doing, and they were just oblivious. You know, they really didn't care. So that was not a good experience with them. I was trying to get them to see what we were doing. And then I joined Watch the Vote, and I guess I was made an admin. You know, we approved people coming in from all over America. And I can't even remember. There were 3 busloads of delegates that were lost and got lost in Tampa. And this was, I'm sure it was done on purpose. I don't even remember if they ever got to the convention. Do you remember that? Anybody remember that? If our delegates got to the convention in Tampa?
2012, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Bruce, were you following things back then? Were you in Florida back then? Do you recall? Hi, Bruce. Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
No, no worries.
Supposedly the story was
Oh, sorry.
they got them lost. Like, I don't know if bus drivers were paid. I think there were 3 busloads of delegates. And like I said, I don't know if they were paid to get lost, you know, and like delay getting them to the Tampa convention. That was aggravating. Was also very aggravating. I and quite a few, I don't recall how many delegates were there, and we were on the far end of the meeting room, and we tried to talk, and we raised our hands, and we, you know, they just ignored us. I don't know if you're hearing me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Mhm.
They just ignored us at the Illinois State Convention. That was very frustrating. It made me angry.
Yeah, I bet. Definitely. Well, thank you for your input. I do want to give it, pass it to Bruce though, just for a second to see if he had something to interject.
Thank you, Trini. Yeah, no, thanks. I actually have a lot to say about this subject. I appreciate that you're curating this space about this. I mean, when you think about it, you know, how are, you know, we in the truther community supposed to approach yet another election knowing full well that both of the parties are captured by corporate interests? And not only that, that they actually carry out false flag terrorist attacks, state crimes against democracy, against the people. And this is what makes us different from all of the other commentators, including the alternative media commentators, who have still not even embraced the message of 9/11 truth yet. They're dipping their toes in this subject. But I mean, this all relates to elections because we understand that 9/11 truth should have been an election issue a long time ago. How is this not the election discussion that we're having, which is how are we going to continue this masquerade of having these elections? But no, I have a lot to say about this subject, and I don't know if we're following along with a particular agenda. But as a matter of fact, we're talking about the Bernie Sanders campaign. I don't know if you folks remember Tim Canova, but Tim Canova, his campaign for Congress, this is 2016. He was probably the biggest down ballot race that year in 2016. Bernie Sanders actually endorsed his candidacy, which sort of catapulted him into the national spotlight. And, going from someone on that campaign from day one, walking into the office, starting from complete scratch, to the campaign grew to have 4 field offices, and all of the ex-Bernie Sanders volunteers were flying down to South Florida and like living in this community house to volunteer for our campaign, the Tim Canova for Congress campaign. Long story short, I got to see a lot of shenanigans firsthand. And Nancy, who was just talking about this, we're bringing up some history here about what we learned from election 2016 about the conduct of that Democratic primary, and how the Democratic primary revealed what a scam the entire, well, at the very least, the entire primary process is, because of the shenanigans that took place with the delegates. I know there was a rally in Chicago. They threw a coffin, over the fence. So that 2016 was a very important window into this subject of election fraud. And what happened in the Tim Canova for Congress race is that, as you know, he was running against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, of course, the former DNC chair, right? So we know Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Hillary Clinton were like this, right? So here we have this upstart in the Democratic Party challenging her, and he was against the TPP, and he was, the progressive that year. Well, what ended up happening after the race was over, and all the polls showed that he was doing, that he was going to beat her, that it seemed like a real grassroots upset, like in 2014 when Eric Cantor was upset by that libertarian guy. It really seemed like, he had put the money into the field and was going to upset. So long story short, after the election, he sued to see the ballots. He wanted to audit the ballots, and the corrupt supervisor of elections, Debbie Wasserman, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry, her name escapes me. The supervisor of elections there, she basically admitted under oath that she destroyed all of the ballots. Wow. And so there was no ability to audit this. He basically did as much as he could as an independent to raise the alarm. To me, I just look at that whole experience as the canary in the coal mine that, wait a second, how is it possible that you have this election, all the polls show that he was beating her, and then it's the most corrupt Democratic political machine imaginable in South Florida, Broward County, the most blue county in the entire state. And see, this is where when we touch on the the conversation we were having earlier about rally attendance. Folks, I was there at the Trump rally in Plantation, Florida. Okay, this is the most blue part of Florida, the most Democratic stronghold of the entire state. Okay, the rally at that stadium was what you'd expect at any other rally, where you could not approach the place. The cars, the place, we barely got a seat. We were the last people to get seated. It was filled to the brim with thousands of people outside. Folks, this is in the bluest part of the state of Florida. This is what I saw with my own eyes. So when we talk about the election results, I produced a 40-minute documentary. We can touch on that, later, 2 weeks after the election. When I started to see these questions about the election results and all these whistleblower videos from the counting center, in Pennsylvania, Detroit, all these whistleblower videos coming out. I'm like, oh my God, there's something seriously wrong here. And I'm not even some hardcore Trump supporter in the sense that, I don't think he's above criticism. At the same time, I don't have TDS like the rest of these liberal nutcases. I mean, there should be a place for a truther perspective on these elections, and election fraud needs to be a part of the conversation. So I have a lot to say about this subject. I was kind of all over the map there, but I'm happy to weigh in as we go forward.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you. And yes, we're not really following a set agenda, but I would just ask everyone to kind of self-monitor, keep it to a couple, 3 minutes so that we can pass the baton around the room and keep an interesting discussion going. I'll just remind everybody that we're about respectful dialogue at TAP. No matter which side of the aisle you're on, we respect everyone's viewpoints. And the thing that we're really wanting to call out is what I think what we should be focused on as a country is how do we move forward? Because a lot of the points that you mentioned, Bruce, are 100% on point. The things that we should be voting on and deciding as a people are not happening. And a lot of the bills that are passed contain a lot of bloat, a lot of pork, a lot of things that we're paying for that most people have no clue what we're paying for. So the system is truly flawed, and that's what we're here to discuss tonight, is ways that we can work together as a people to make this a fairer system for everyone. And I think Mike touched on it earlier too. At some point in the country, there's half of us aren't happy. The other half are not happy. And meanwhile, we're all participating in probably one of the biggest shams in history, unwittingly. So
yeah. I don't know if it's possible to even have.
Oh, let me just remind, if we're going to talk, let's raise our hands. Nancy, go ahead this time, but let's just get everybody in queue that does want to speak by recognizing hands. But go ahead.
I just don't even know if it's possible to have fair elections anymore. Is it going to be possible? Because there's just so much control over them. You know, how do we break that control?
Let's ponder that question. Anybody want to take a stab at that? Mike, you're on mute. Your mouth's moving, but you're muted. So, Mike.
Matt, did you want to say something? I saw your hand.
Come off mute, Matt.
You're muted, Matt.
Let's see if I can't unmute him, or I would. Give him just a second there to find his button.
Okay.
Thank
Can
you.
you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about money. I mean, it's obvious that we all know this. Money drives politics. And everybody is in it for themselves. I mean, the spirit of civic mindedness. JFK saying, that's not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for the country. That doesn't exist hardly anymore. So with Citizens United in 2012, that decision basically let the floodgates open, and I've seen estimates between 70 to 90% of the funds for campaigns are dark. It's dark money. It's not traceable. We can't survive as a nation this way. And I would suggest that we get back on the bandwagon and try to initiate another Citizens United movement.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Well, I'd like to step in at this time. I really feel, we're at a brick wall. We have no ability to penetrate the courts. The courts are ignoring us on not only 9/11, but we've had several attempts to get evidence before the various courts all around the country with the 2020 election, and we've been denied or ignored. So what we have done here in the state of Florida, we have organized a statewide effort to convene statewide grand juries to investigate 4 different types of crimes. And we initiated this effort April the 4th of 22. And within 90 days, the governor selected one of our 4 requests. We requested 4 different crimes be investigated: the 2020 election, the illegal immigration issue, the war on our children with the LGBTQ curriculums, and the COVID scam. And out of those 4 requests, he first chose the border, and that grand jury is in session right now, and it's about on its 5th presentment. The second grand jury he convened that we requested was the COVID scam, and that grand jury was convened December 27th, I believe it was, in 22, and it is also in session.
Wow.
They have yet to present any evidence or any information yet. So if we can get any evidence regarding the election into a statewide grand jury and have it adjudicated, that could ignite a spark across the nation, especially when they find out that the machines are easily hackable. And this was proven in the Hacking Democracy documentary. And that everybody really needs to watch that documentary. If you've not seen it, I would put it on your priority list. And that was back in 06, 07. I think the documentary was made in 09, but the evidence was after the 04 election. And it was Democrats that first uncovered that. So we truly have a bipartisan effort here of whistleblowers finding evidence of, corrupt elections. So it's really a no-brainer. That is not the issue, whether or not we have, irregular elections, dishonest elections. That's been going on for over 100 years. There have been many cases of election crimes that have been uncovered, prosecuted, and people went to jail for. So it's nothing new. But like 9/11, we have hit a brick wall, and we've got to figure out a way to penetrate that wall. And I think our most powerful weapon is our numbers. The deep state, they have the money, they have the deep pockets, but we have the numbers. And if we harness the numbers properly and organize, we can make a huge difference and break down that wall. I yield.
Anybody else?
Sure. Should we be talking about the affidavit at all?
Oh, hang on just a second, Matt. Hold that thought. Let's go with Bruce, and then I'll be pulling that affidavit up. I'll put it in the chat actually, because I think it will be easier for people to read. So while I'm doing that, Bruce, please go ahead.
I'll just be very brief on this one. I mean, when you think about it, this dialogue about money in politics, right? Corporate money in politics, super PACs. I mean, when's the last time you heard, someone even use the expression super PAC? I was just thinking about this the other day about how, although the money in politics problem has gotten worse in the past few years, somehow the dialogue about the problem of money in politics seems to have evaporated. I mean, I don't know if I'm the only person that's noticed that. I mean, is that an election issue? When's the last time you heard somebody talk about money in politics? I mean, it almost feels like we're bringing up, something nostalgic from years past, but this problem hasn't exactly gone away. And also when we think about, election fraud in the state of Florida, I mean, going back to, the year 2000, I mean, by 2006, it was still something that was coming up in the gubernatorial debates about, how much of a fiasco election 2000 was. And yet you fast forward to 2020 and somehow you're censored. Like my YouTube channel was censored for talking about election fraud. And it's like, wait a second, this used to be part of a mainstream discussion. And now somehow, election fraud in 2020 became this extreme taboo. And it is a problem, especially among the younger generations. I have to say that that's the danger of this brainwashing, is that somehow the election fraud in 2020 never became a nonpartisan issue. It's literally seen. So I guess that sort of stop the steal branding left such an impression in people's minds that it created the impression that anyone that talks about election fraud has to be, like a hardcore Trump supporter. Somehow, like just the serious, straight-laced election fraud, like intellectual types, like never really stepped up. And I think that an opportunity was blown. I'm just bringing up an example. I'm born and raised in Rhode Island. I went back to my 20-year high school reunion last year, and of course, I start hearing this, discussion about, this person's an election fraud, election denier. And I'm thinking, oh God. And I'm thinking, unfortunately, the millennial generation has this, I'm a political independent, by the way. I just criticize both sides of the spectrum equally. But I see that this mentality has prevented a lot of the younger generations from taking election fraud seriously, when the reality is that what 2020 teaches us is that we can't trust elections going back how many decades? If the Supreme Court isn't going to look at the evidence and say, looks like a nothing burger, if they're going to say, we're not touching that with a 10-foot pole, how can we trust elections going back to the 1960s maybe? So anyways, that's another set of ideas, and I'm just going to wrap that up, and we'll pass it back over to Matt.
Keep passing it. This is a good conversation. We need to be having it all across America.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bruce.
Got a question for Bruce. Hello?
Yep. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, hey, Bruce. What do you do for a living? You sound like a very well-informed guy.
Well, I didn't have a developed political consciousness until about 2006, when I woke up to the reality of 9/11, and that just led from one rabbit hole to the next. And I guess, in a sense, like I'm sure everybody on this call, you eventually, when you're a truther, eventually you start transcending this whole silly partisan dialectic that everyone else is trapped in. And so that's what started my journey. And then the next question that you ask is, what's going on with the media? So I'm self-employed. I do graphic design and a lot of things basically. But I'm self-employed, and instead of being able to enjoy that, I'm just I can't get out of my head what's happening in this country. So most of my focus throughout the day that should be focused on professional development and focused on businesses, just thinking about the political situation, thinking about, how that's developing. So yes, you could say that I'm a political animal from being a truther for all these years, and just wondering how in 2023 this could still be, we could still, it could still be such a small group of people that are the real truthers that see through all this stuff. So once again, I have a lot to say about this subject. It's a very long.
No, thank you. Thank you for your passion. John,
Yeah.
go ahead, please. I wish more people
Okay.
were like that.
Okay.
Sure,
yeah,
younger
actually,
people will
that's
like
not-
you.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Nancy.
Who,
What?
who are you calling on, me or somebody
Yeah,
else?
I was calling on you, John.
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, what turned me around originally was the Vietnam War and the draft. That's when I began to realize that all the values that we'd been taught to worship and about this country and its history were being overthrown and sabotaged one way and another. So for 10 years, basically, I fought against the Vietnam War and the draft, and nowadays, the Republicans, I was initially kind of a lukewarm Democrat, but then I was a founding member in Hawaii of Peace and Freedom Party. I was in SDS. I was in the Draft Resistance, etc. So that's the era that I got turned on to truth versus the BS that we've been given. The country now, I describe it as brittle. The whole system, because then there was flexibility. They would co-opt, they would kind of maneuver. Right now, things are so polarized. It's like a person with hardened arteries, and the brittle is hard but fragile, and we got to remember the fragile part. Now, in 2000, that election, 9/11 wouldn't have happened if they hadn't got Bush and Cheney in on that election. So we got to recognize that that was what they already had, that because of the Project for a New American Century. So they wouldn't have been able to carry that out in 2001 if Bush and Cheney had lost. So that goes a lot toward the fanatical Florida debacle, when all these people were pounding the election workers, and the Supreme Court, who had no business interfering, decided the election. So there's more to say, but I'll cut it off at that point.
Well, I think you make a
You're
good point. And I'd like to dovetail on the 9/11 issue. I really don't think we're going to be able to ever achieve anything unless we can open 9/11, that political Pandora box. If we open 9/11 and get traction on that, this country can see a revolution, hopefully peaceful, and it will change things. I see, excuse me, I see 9/11 as the great catalyst, the great triggering device. I yield.
Yeah.
Can I comment on that?
Yes.
As you may know, Professor Halsey was just on Jimmy Dore's show. Everybody know Professor Halsey, who did the study of Building 7. And I watched that, and he was really good. And Richard Gage has been unstoppable. I mean, he has been talking to thousands of people at rallies and events all over the world. And he and his wife Gail have been fantastic. So it is gaining traction, definitely. Okay.
Yes, thank you. And thanks to the tireless, devoted advocates that we have in our midst. I am very proud of everyone for the work they're doing and for the persistence shown by so many. And I just hope that we can all continue to lead by example, and hope that more people start getting on the train with us. Well, that's a bad terminology there. More people getting on this ride, because it is a ride, and it's up and down, and it's jerking everybody all around. And until we have some democracy, true democracy restored, where the rule of law is really what is ruled in our land, we're all in for a world of hurt. The corruption is just continuing to mount day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, decade by decade. The corruption, it's piling up. I've stopped. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
Hey, audio check, JB.
Hi, JB.
Hi. One thing, one of the biggest things, I did a backflip over. It's been a few years ago, on the 20th anniversary. The Lawyers Committee had put on it was I guess what you'd call it I guess it was a Zoom cast. There were 18 guests, almost like a 7-hour program, which is huge. Kennedy was one of the members that had his 20-minute speech. He was not able to take part in it. He did give permission to play a 20-minute speech excerpt. I say that to say this, to have people of stature got, big enough, enough courage to say, hey, we're going to get up to the microphone, to try and save anything. He also did this for geoengineering, Dane Wigington, and my jaw hit the ground. It's like, this dude does have some major stature. Anyway, over.
Go right ahead, Bruce. I'm going to mute Matt here. We got some background noise. Oops. Go ahead. Go ahead,
Really
Bruce,
quick.
please.
I just wanted to mention something. Again, we're talking about election fraud in the realm of solutions, because I put some thought into this. Actually, after the election of 2020, I formed a business entity, filed the application. I didn't form it as an official nonprofit yet or anything like that, but I formed something called Floridians for Electoral Reform. This might be of some relevance to you. And basically what I'd envision with that was, when you think about what's the solution to election fraud, because everything these days, if you have to simplify things down. And it seems to me that one of the big critical solutions here that really relates to years ago, there was that explosive whistleblower testimony. I think it was here in Florida, an IT guy, I think it was 2008, or gave this testimony in 2007 about the voting machines, and how the voting machines were, he was paid to program an algorithm that flipped elections by like 49% or something like that. And so basically, they're like, wait a second, you're telling me 2020 was the same issue from 2007 all over again, where you have machine tabulation producing its own data, basically in a black box. So wouldn't it seem that the answer to this is to just advocate for getting a constitutional amendment on the ballot, calling for hand-counted paper ballots, right? Like, isn't that like the big, if you're going to try to simplify all this down, we can't take money out of politics, right? Because you'd have to end the Fed to do that. And that's just, that's right. So when it comes to something that you can actually realistically try to get on a ballot and pass, I mean, do we agree? Do we have a consensus that hand counted paper ballots is one of the primary calls to action as far as addressing election fraud going forward?
With tight controls. Yeah, I don't, how do we prevent the fraud that can happen with hand-counted paper ballots? I mean, that's an issue. I think about the Arizona election with the governor, Kari Lake. I mean, I wasn't really I wasn't following that too closely, but I mean, the fraud is just rampant, and people just have no morals anymore. God's judgment is on this nation. I don't know. I hate to be a downer, but trying to keep an open mind. But I wake up every day and I ask the Lord to, to change this nation, to convict the evildoers. Satan is just prowling around like a roaring lion, and I think this has a lot to do with it. Sorry. I get into spiritual aspects of things too, with what's going on.
We are in a spiritual battle.
It's easy to do. Thank you. Yeah. So where do we go from here, guys? I like your ideas, Bruce. I think that's great. How would we go about implementing something like that to get that ball rolling?
Well, no, that's a good question. I thought that you can approach it at the local level with a county strategy, and then you can at the state level you can approach it with a constitutional amendment. And of course, basically that just involves funding a signature gathering drive in order to reach a certain threshold, which they continue to make more difficult year after year in order to get that placed on the ballot. So it's a kind of long-term initiative. Unfortunately, this is something I think about a lot, is that we are becoming more and more short attention span, right? I think they've actually measured this from the 90s. Like we had like a 20-minute attention span. Now it's like 30 seconds or something like that. They measure this, right? So we want this instant gratification. When I analyze a lot of the problems that we're facing, you have to do a lot of research, like going back into history, to realize that it's as if these problems have been compounding decades and decades on top of each other, and there just isn't a quick fix to something as big as this election fraud. But at the end of the day, we have this challenge. We have to legitimize independent and third party candidates. Like this is the challenge, is that you look back in American history, and there have been times there was at the start of the country, it was just the Federalist Party. That was the only party. And then there was this, this competition between the Whigs and the Jacksonian Republicans, and then, the Democrat Republicans, and that split off because of the split between Andrew Jackson. And there's been times in American history when we turn the page on the political parties that were in power. But we can all see what's happened is that after the Federal Reserve private money monopoly, really established itself, in DC, that DC Wall Street corridor, it corrupted, it printed up enough money that it corrupted both parties with money to the point that it just established them as this inevitable duopoly. And so all that it does is it goes through this casting process like Hollywood, and it brings through the secret societies and whatever weird stuff is going on behind the scenes. It gets these paid actors that it positions in the, positions in power. Our elections are a complete joke. And there has to be some way that we the people, whatever that entity is the fifth estate, we have to be able to express before the election takes place, none of the above. We don't agree with this process. There has to be some way of dissenting against this process. There has to be some way. We can't keep doing lesser of two evils voting. It's not going to work. Once again, that's a lot of ideas.
Right.
I'm on board with you 100%. To think that people really think that votes make a difference in today's times, it really is an illusion. Like George Carlin, I think, called it. If voting really made a difference, they wouldn't let us do it.
Right.
Good points, Mike. You're talking. I see your lips, Mike, but you're muted.
Yep.
Come in.
Until the people wake up, though, and get off their lazy behinds, it's going to continue. We have a very vocal minority in this country. And, people are more interested in the football games, the car races, shopping. We have a very lazy populace, and it's pathetic. And I don't know what it's going to take. I think it's going to take a slap in the face with some very big economic collapse, perhaps. And then the people might wake up, but then it's probably going to be too late because we'll all be paralyzed by the economic collapse. So I really, I'd like to echo Nancy's comments. I think we're under the judgment of God because of our sinfulness, and I think we're reaping what we have sowed. And
I'm part of the abortion, anti-abortion movement, and lots of Christians all over America probably need more. We need more churches, dispensational churches, exposing what's there are so many abortions going on. I just really believe God is judging us for that.
Yeah, I do too, Nancy.
Sorry, I hate to be a downer.
Yeah, but it's reality.
Yeah.
I just put a meme in the chat. When you vote for the lesser of two evils, evil always wins.
Yeah. So back to the trigger. We need some kind of explosive issue or incident that can really wake people up. I used to be, when I was in college, a lifeguard, and when they taught us lifeguard lessons, sometimes your victim that's drowning is hysterical, and they think they're going to die, and they just aren't using their mind. So what we were taught is you're to very, not gently, but you want to do it in a flat-handed manner, slap their face, get them to come to,
Yeah.
get them to come out of their hysteria and their shock. And
Yeah.
I think that's America. America needs a good slap in the face by the lifeguard. So maybe, if we have an economic collapse, it might make people wake up. I think the inflation that's starting to really sweep the nation is having a huge impact. And that brings us to the issue, and I don't want to get off into the weeds too much, but, these issues are front and center. The Federal Reserve is the cause of this inflation. It's a hidden tax, and 99% of the American people have no clue as to why the prices are going up. They just think they're going up because the news reports them going up. They don't think about the mechanism that makes them go up. And that's the invisible tax that this private banking monopoly has put upon us in America. And so, again, we need a triggering catalyst. And that's my final comments. I'm going to have to get off here pretty soon.
All right, Mike. If you can peel off whenever you need to. John, go ahead, and then I'll call on you then next, Bruce. John, go ahead, please.
Okay, good. Yeah, well, of course, we remember the Constitution says Congress has the right to coin money. Now, they weren't just talking about the pieces of metal we carry around in our pocket. It would mean create the money supply. And I think that's something that people could rally to. It's not going to solve the problem, but it's a start. And we need to also. I like ridicule and satire as a way of taking down the tyranny. I think that's making them look like fools, which they are, and do it in a humorous way. People relate to humor rather than tirades. So we need to like Robin Williams, for example. Robin Williams on our side addressing Congress. He was like the PhD of humor. Anyway, so that was the point about the money supply. Mike's absolutely right about that. That's and this is just small inflation. I mean, some countries have it so you take a box full of dollar bills to the store to get your loaf of bread. We haven't come anywhere near that yet. This is to use a good Hawaiian word, seeing that behind Trina there, it's a manini. Manini is a little fish, so they use the word manini to mean insignificant, not important. So,
thank you for that. Thank you for that, John. Very good points. Bruce, I think you were next on cue.
Yeah. I'll try to be brief. There's just so much to say here, isn't there? I mean, what are we really talking about here? We're talking about the revolution, right? This long overdue revolution that needed to take place a long time ago. I mean, sometimes for example, if we look at what's happening in Gaza, right? I mean, there's a part of me that feels that this is the wrong timeline. Like, this never should have happened. Like 17 years of 9/11 truth on the internet, and the next shoe should have dropped by now. This never should have been allowed to get to where it is. But see, I don't want to get too far off topic, but what are we talking about here? We're talking about the fact that the truther consciousness, what Mike's talking about, what Nancy's talking about, like these points that we're making, notice all these points that we're making are completely forbidden and completely censored from any kind of mainstream discussion, whether it's the pundits on mainstream news. And notice what the pundits on mainstream news say mirrors and reflects with what the paid actors, the elected officials are. That's that entire set of ideas, the language that they use, right? It's all part of the same dynamic, the fake bought off media and the fake bought off. I mean, think about it. A private bank owns the government and basically just sprinkles off enough cash to keep the lights on in the halls of Congress and like just hires paid actors from around the country to come in and, and act out and read their lines basically. And, and do like John Kennedy and like emote, and like do all this stuff because the crowd loves it. The crowd eats it up. We still in America have not snapped out of it yet. We still have not realized, hey, why are we still playing this game with Democrats and Republicans? So, once again, bringing it back, the truther political consciousness and these talking points that we arrive at as people that we're not here to censor our conclusions about what happened on 9/11, which means we're also not here to censor our conclusions of what happened with all the other false flags. Notice, if you're not allowed to talk about the false flag of 9/11, not even Tucker Carlson, he's dipping his toes in and then he'll step right back, right? Folks, we have to, once again, honestly, I mean, if I'm going to be a little bit critical here for a second, I just feel like when I talk to people out there who are not truthers, I feel like our standards are all the way in the floor. I feel like when I talk to people, it's like they have no standards. Whatever the establishment wants to put out, whatever the latest psyop, fake thing, or especially whatever the latest character, whatever the latest controlled opposition personality they want to put out there, the people will just eat it up and react to it as if they don't have this imagination in their mind going, hey, none of the above. We need a candidate that's actually going to speak the truth, and we're talking about inflation, and it's if we need to establish these red lines. Okay, the Federal Reserve and 9/11 truth, I feel like these are two of like the biggest ones in the room about that we can immediately weed out anybody that wants to be pro-establishment, right? And he wants to be like serious. If you're not going to talk about those two things, I guess you can throw in election fraud too. Although once again, the ice is thawing on that as it appears that the Economist is putting Trump on the cover. It appears that the establishment is now given into the inevitability of a potentially incoming Trump administration. I don't want to derail that, but anyways, there's a lot of psyops out there. There's a lot of propaganda out there, and it's confusing people's minds. The American political consciousness is still 10 years behind where it needs to be, and I yield back.
Yeah, and I'm going to take you just in 1 second, Ziola. I just want to make a comment, Bruce, something you had said earlier. Until the American people can really stand up and demand and say, I think there's a percentage of about 30% of Americans don't even vote anymore because they've completely lost confidence. So until the whole country can stand up and say, no, we're not playing this game anymore. We call BS. And until we really call everybody out on the carpet that is being paid to represent us, we're in this sinking ship. So, yeah, all of us have to suffer until everyone else kind of gets a clue. Zila, go ahead, please. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you, Trina. Yeah, I've been listening, and I was thinking about that clause in the Declaration of Independence where it says that if our government becomes corrupt to this point, that we, the people, have the right to overthrow it or at least call it out. I've been saying this for 10 years. I wish we would have done this 10 years ago. We wouldn't be here today. I think we better get on it and do it before this right is taken away from us, because as we know, they're stripping rights left and right. Every time they're passing, executive orders and resolutions and amendments and all these other things, every time they do this, we're losing rights. Every
How do we do that?
I wish I knew. I've been asking several people over the past 10 years, hey, let's get together and get this thing going forward. And they always say, oh, you're dreaming. There's no way we can do that. Well, if we had gotten on this 10 years ago, we would have had it done by now. And that's what breaks my heart is I have been told to shut up, stand down, this and that, not by anybody in this chat at all. I'm not trying to say that in any way. I'm just saying that I've run up against brick walls within the truth movement as far as this goes. And it's been so frustrating to the point where I almost gave up recently. The past 2 years has been very discouraging for me. I'll leave it at that.
Discouraging it is, but don't lose faith, because These people, everybody on this call tonight that came to this meeting, you all give me hope to keep going. But something does have to break. We are seeing more and more families homeless, living in cars, living under bridges, living under tarps, living under tents. And for one of the most prosperous nations of our time, we have taken away our political system, not us, not anyone on this call. This is what we're fighting for, everybody on this call. Everything that has been put into place to run this country has done nothing but strip the American people of good jobs, manufacturing, actually making things that are made in America. The globalist, you mentioned the TPP earlier, Bruce, all of these different things that are passed to make this one world government work that they're creating around us is really harming not only America, but I would venture to say all countries. So that's what I have to input right now. Thank you, everybody. Let's keep the discussion going. Ziola, please, you have your hand up. I can't tell. Wait a minute. Does Matt have his up or is he just stretching?
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Okay, just a second, Ziola.
The thread of this conversation, it's very taut and it's ready to choke us. And what I mean is, the common denominator is taxation without representation. We're funding all these ills, and the government does not represent Americans anymore. And if you talk to 100 people on the street and you ask them the question, do you think our government represents the people anymore? 90% of them say no. I think we need to have a tax revolt.
Yeah, I agree. I wish everybody or a big percentage would stop paying taxes.
It has to be done uniformly. Get millions of people to do it at the same time.
That would do it.
They need to be choked.
Yeah, like Trina says, we've been tricked. Every time there's a proposal for something to be a solution, it's a trick. Like the Patriot Act. Did that work for the Patriots? No, it worked against us. So many different things that have been brought in and saying, oh, we're doing this for you, the people. They're actually doing the opposite. It's like we're being played. We're being played for fools. And once the American people can recognize this and stand up and demand an evolution out of this system, the two-party thing only divides us. It does nothing but completely divide us. We can all get on the same page and say, hey, we want rights for all Americans in this regard, and make it make sense without saying, oh, you guys are liberals and we're over here, we're conservatives, and we don't need that. That's pulling us completely apart, and it's all by design. And as soon as we recognize that and say, hey, we're not playing this game, we're all on board here together. America's one big ship, and we need to agree that we all want rights, we all want to be able to live in peace and go forward and be successful and have a chance at life, a fair chance at life. Because as it stands now, we're just being stripped every which way and taxed to death. There's taxes upon taxes upon taxes, layers and layers of it. But that's where it's gotten to a point of people are just like backed into a corner. And a friend has shared an analogy with me saying that we are actually in a prison and the door's wide open and we've backed ourselves into this little prison cell. And while the door is still open, we need to acknowledge that and make sure that it doesn't close on us. Over and out.
Yes, thank you. And then what I was going to say is I don't even know if most Americans realize that we don't even have habeas corpus in this country anymore.
That was established in
The National,
16.
the National Defense Authorization Act made that go away. So anybody can be held indefinitely without court appearance, without a trial. So
Yeah.
that doesn't say much for habeas corpus. Over, that's what I had to add.
Hey, I just wanted to let everybody know before I leave. There is a secret plan in a major city in America to use 9/11 as an issue to get people's attention. And if anybody would like to know more about this plan, I left my phone number and email in the chat for you to contact me. And I think it would be of great interest to almost everyone on this call. It's a very revolutionary idea. It has to remain secret because this will be a public video eventually. So I can't reveal it. But if you would like to contact me privately, I would love to share this with you. And I think it's an idea whose time has come. And with that said, I'm going to have to get off here. And everyone have a good night. Thank you.
Thank
You
you,
too.
Mike.
Thank you,
Good
Mike.
night.
And you know what? I am hitting the road tomorrow to head back to Arizona, the mountains in Arizona. And I'm in Chicago right now. So I need to
Okay.
hear with a map in front of me, trying to figure out how I'm
Okay.
going.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight, Nancy. Travel safe and we'll be in touch soon.
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
good night.
Thanks for doing this. Okay, good.
You're
Enjoy
welcome.
Arizona.
Thank you for joining. Go ahead, John. John, did you want to go ahead and speak? You're all, there you go. You're off mute now.
Oh, there we are. Yeah. Here in Maine, we have quite a large group of people that get it. Most of them are coming from the conservative and even Republican base, but they're seeing the limitations of that avenue as well. And I'm well accepted there, even though I've been coming from the authentic far left, having come out of as a 60s radical activist, which is how I self-define. And we have meetings regularly, and sometimes 200-300 people. And we the people that, Merrill Nass is here, and also Christiane Northrup, who are two of the top people in the whole country on the vax issue. And we just learned today that Merrill's, the Maine Medical Board has continued to suspend her license. I think they did that rather than revoke it, because there's a legal distinction between those. Because if they revoked it, then she has grounds to sue them, which she intends to do. Everybody hopefully knows who Merrill Nass is. Anybody who doesn't, okay, well, I can't see everybody, so I just a moot question. Anyway,
Well,
she has been a dynamo on the vax issue and on the WHO. She's been going all over the world, speaking in Europe multiple occasions, and is just all over the internet with presentations. She has a new platform called doortofreedom.org, Door to Freedom, which has a lot of information, and somebody I know as well. So,
yeah, I just want to add to that, John, real quick, if I may. We
Yeah.
did have, we put in our last newsletter a blurb about what James Roguski and Dr. Merrill Nass are doing. And we mentioned the Door to Freedom in the December newsletter that just went out a few weeks ago. And also, I'm putting in a video. It was one of TAP's first forum videos of Dr. Nass and James Roguski that we had on July the 6th. So I've popped that video in the chat. If anyone didn't get a chance to see that, you can certainly watch the replay. So thank you for
Okay.
plugging them. Yeah, they're amazing. They're doing great work, and we support them fully. TAP is fully in support of their work. Dr. Ness and James Roguski. So thank you for bringing that up. And Bruce.
And I think I'll be getting off momentarily.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll say goodnight to you in case you go ahead and drop off, John.
Yeah.
It looks like Matt's waving goodbye too. Bruce, go ahead. We'll keep
Sure.
the
No,
discussion going.
I think this has been a great discussion. I think probably entirely too brief. Hopefully we'll, I know you have plans to keep these going, but I mean, we need a truther-oriented election conversation badly, like oxygen. I mean, the only existing dialogue out there is, I mean, is just, it's not acceptable. This dialogue where, all the real issues are censored. I mean, just to speak a little bit about my background, I was involved, well, with it working on issue-based campaigns for a number of years. And that eventually led me to the Green Party, right? So I was the co-chair of Miami-Dade Green Party for 5 years. Eventually, I learned, I saw that the Green Party, it went down the path of the dark side, and it went down the path of identity politics, and basically became indistinguishable from the Democratic Party. So it looks like we just lost power here. We're getting a little bit of weather down here in the Keys.
Yeah, it's moving up this way.
The point is that I learned a lot about monetary reform from being involved with the Green Party, but long story short, because of what happened with this whole identity politics thing, and you probably heard, some of the scandals in Germany. The point that I'm trying to get at is that the Green Party is not the answer. In fact, it almost seems as if the existing third parties are not even the answer. So, I mean, my idea is, I've been thinking we need to found truther-oriented, just new political parties. I mean, it's not hard. It's just a matter of filing paperwork and, getting a group together. I mean, I feel like, the challenge is uniting the like-minded people in a given state in order to, sustain the attention span for a project like that. But I mean, again, at the end of the day, when we talk about solutions, I mean, there's a lot to complain about, but when it comes down to solutions, obviously they've cemented off all of the doorways, so to speak, in terms of, allowing the people to have a voice. I mean, if the people had a voice, all we would do is grab the bully pulpit and somebody would yell something about 9/11 truth, and then somebody would be forced to react to it, and then everybody would be forced to react to it. I mean, it seems like that's one of the dams that we just keep trying to make, trying to break, and yet look at the amount of suffering that we keep causing around the world as an empire. I mean, once again, I go back to some of the conversations I was having with some of the smartest kids in the class, right? From back in high school. Here we are 20 years later, shooting the breeze, and I'm hearing them saying the wrong things about how how we need to help the people in Ukraine. And I'm sitting here thinking, are you telling me that millennials did not learn a damn thing from the Iraq War? 20 years of the Iraq War, the war on terror, the spying, the debt, the war, the bloodshed, and millennials are going to look at the fact that no one was held accountable for the war on terror, and then those same people are like, oh yeah, we're going to send weapons and billions of dollars over to Ukraine to help the people, and the millennials are going to believe it. Oh my God! Oh my God! So the point is that there's this political side to this challenge that we face here. How can we politically solve our problems? Well, we've got our work cut out for it. Work cut out for us. But don't you realize that the bigger problem is that we in America are now so deeply socially engineered that we're so screwed up. We're so dysfunctional. You can't find people you can trust. You can't find competent people. You can't find anybody that knows what the heck is going on. Why? There's still only a 2 to 3% of people out there are truthers. And so isn't that the other side to this? Like the psychological, side to this, the personal side to this, the other side, in addition to the political challenges that we face. So once again, that's a lot to bounce off of, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you. It's true. Everything you say is true. And I just like to add that the other night, one of our guests, Christopher Jersky, said, first and foremost, before we put on the label of any political party, which we've established and has been well established, they are not serving the people. So I would like to anyone that's hearing this and watches this later, perhaps, that's not here tonight, to bear in mind that when we put a political label on ourselves, we don't want to forget that we're also all Americans. And that was what Christopher Jersky said the other night. These political parties aren't serving us. And everything you've said is true, Bruce. People can't even have what TAP is reinforcing is respectful dialogue, no matter which side of the aisle you are on or what your political beliefs are. People have been so socially engineered, as you said, they can't even have respectful dialogue anymore. People can't even talk to people that they don't agree with in a civil manner anymore. We really have lost our way, and I don't know what it's going to take to bring us back as a society. But if we can't find our way back, I don't want anybody to think this is really off the deep end, but I really have my doubts about the survival of humanity going forward. If we're even going to make it as a species, if we can't do better. Over. That's what I have. So.
Well, Trina, that was a big one.
Well, let me hear your thoughts on it, Matt.
I think a lot of people are, living their lives with horse blinders on, and they can't handle bad news anymore. I think that it's hard to get through to folks. But over half the country knows that 9/11 was not what we were told. And you got to wonder, okay, if there's 3 or 2%, as Bruce had just mentioned, that are going to be active, what about the 45% or 47% of the population that know what happened, but they can't deal with it? They don't want to go there. How do we guilt them into taking action? How do we inspire them with the spirit of truth to the point of dropping what they're doing and taking a real hard look at themselves and at their family and their situation in life? I thought COVID would drive people into a sense of solitude, and out of COVID would come a higher consciousness. That was my hope and prayer. And the deep state has put so many layers of misinformation and psychological operations, and it's a crazy level of almost dead silence. You can hear a pin drop, at least when I observe people. It's like there's a big fat elephant in the room, and nobody sees it. And I do think that the globalists are going to be putting the pedal to the metal, and we're going to have to find a way to survive, because I think Congress has demonstrated that, and I would say some of our presidential administrations have just sold us down the river. And as was mentioned, I think again by Bruce, we have caused we've killed 5 million roughly Muslims and destroyed cities, and we sell 70%, 65% of all the weaponry for war to the world. do we deserve to get our asses whooped? Excuse my French. I'm sorry. I
Beep.
think there's some heavy karma coming our way.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Are we being recorded?
Yes, we are. So we'll beep you out somehow. Ziola, go ahead. Thank you for speaking from your heart, Matt. You're dead on.
Yeah, that was
right.
awesome. And he reminded me about the 800-pound gorilla in the room that Pastor Chuck Baldwin had mentioned, because I'm on his newsletter list and I follow Liberty Fellowship. That's like one of the only churches I actually, will tune into, because he does speak on many things outside of the regular church that are very, very important and pertinent to Americans. So as far as the first point he made, going numb, I noticed myself doing this. And I have to check myself, because at first, like when the, initial war started, or everything that's happened in Gaza, it really threw me for a loop. At first I was like, rah, 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 just got right on it. And then I backed away and I looked at the whole situation, and I had to really reevaluate everything. And I had to get my ducks in a row, and I had to look at it from several different perspectives. So I did that. I took the time, I took my rest, because I was getting like really upset. It's a very, very hot topic for me. Probably one of my main topics that I touch on, and something I'm very concerned about, because it is directly tied with America. And America, is not even allowed to say anything in regards to, they've got like brick walls all around us as far as the narrative goes. The approved narrative, they repeat a lot, and I'm breaking all that down right now. I've got both sides in my own reports and my own studies, but all that aside, as far as going numb, we have to catch ourselves when we do this and recognize it and say, okay, and give yourself a 3-point test. I'm going to back away, take a look at the whole thing, reevaluate, and look at it from different perspectives in order to really make a good evaluation and come back strong with facts, helpful things that we can do to remedy the situation, solutions, instead of panic. I'm seeing a lot of my friends just straight up panicking right now. And that is not serving us whatsoever. What we really need to do is look at everything, come back with solutions, present them, and do our best to just know that, you present the solutions, back away, allow the discussion, come back in, reminders of the solutions, remind everybody, because like Bruce was saying, the short attention spans, that's been detrimental to the American mind in the past 10, 20, even 50 years. We've been conditioned to accept this official narrative, which is oftentimes straight up BS. So we need to recognize that and have the counteroffensive on that ready to go. And I've been taking notes extensively on this for years. And sometimes I forget. I'm like, panic. And then I'm, no. Go back in the files, just reevaluate everything, because that is the best tactic. Just remembering what we got, don't back down. And when we get tired or exhausted from being beat over the head with the official narrative, know when we need to take our rest.
That's right.
So that's what I have on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think everybody probably on this call has been in the trenches for some time. So it's good that we have each other to stay inspired and motivated, and people to talk to when we need someone. So anybody else have anything to add tonight? Otherwise, I think we're winding down. Anybody? Bruce, were you coming off mute?
I guess I can just, throw out some closing thoughts. I guess if we're, winding the call down. I mean, once again, I mean, there's so much to say. Where do you start? I guess the only thing that I guess we sort of touched on, but I just want to emphasize is that what else makes us unique as truthers, right? I mean, is our understanding of history, right? It's almost as if being a truther, I'm just going back and thinking about all the rabbit holes that you go to. And once you go to a rabbit hole and you get some new insight about history, I mean, it's almost as if you think like, well, I mean, if this is how it really went down, like everybody should know this, right? And in so many ways, I mean, I'm kind of understating the case here, but what's happening to us is totally unfair in the sense that if something is going to be screwing you up, it should happen on your watch so you can at least, remember what happened. It shouldn't be the kind of thing where 150 years later, you learn what the Civil War was really about, right? It shouldn't. What we're inheriting is it's very unfair that we've had to unpack this Pandora's box that forces us to completely reinterpret history. I mean, the idea that we're talking about the Constitution, when somebody mentioned it earlier, 1865 was one of those key dates in the that led to where we are. So anyhow, I just wanted to just point out that that's the other thing that is important that we need to somehow keep alive is this complete reinterpretation of history. We always like to only talk about what's current, but I mean, how much are we doing as truthers is going back into the past to understand all these things. And so anyhow, I just wanted to bring it out there and emphasize that point, because when we talk about what does a political movement look like? What do these steps look like? What do these solutions look like? Well, let's remember when we're waking people up, that's part of the process is you need to completely, forget about the official story of everything if you're going to be useful in the truth movement. So anyhow, that was just the last point that I thought it was important to emphasize. But once again, I hope we can keep this conversation going, because I mean, we've still got this election 2024 coming up. I mean, it's going to be unbearable if we have to perceive and comment on everything from the lens of the official narratives and the official left-right paradigm and all of those boring commentators. And how fascinating was this? There's been a few, 1984, there's that East Asia was always at war with Oceania, right? And the whole analogy there was about how the propaganda machine will do these 180s and then just ignore the hypocrisy, right? Well, how fascinating was it that a lot of the right-wing populist, influencers that you see on Twitter, right? The partisan ones, not the cool ones, how fascinating that they did this 180 where they were starting to counter signal the BS around the Ukraine war to the point that the right wing was starting to look more anti-war than the left, right? But then as soon as October 7th happened, boom, immediate 180 where all of the right-wing commentators did this hardcore, pro Zionist line, where the left-wing commentators suddenly grew a heart and suddenly became the bleeding heart liberals again when it came to Israel-Palestine. They did this complete dramatic 180 that, again, if you're paying very close attention, you know that, well, if these people are lying about 9/11, they're lying about everything. They're lying in a way to manipulate the public mind and split us all into left and right. And that's their role. Anyhow, I just thought I'd point out, for those of us who have eyes that can see, I mean, again, and the last thought here is that COVID was a big wake-up call for me, because I never would have believed people would have behaved the way that they behaved. It forced me to completely, once again, recognize my own naivete. I mean, you think you have enough paradigm shifts, and you think you've judged humanity to the point that you've gotten rid of your naivete. But if you told me in 2019 that people would have happily engaged in this mask wearing nonsense, and as if they were as if we were literally in one of those sci-fi movies where the population is just brainwashed by an alien death ray or something. Like when I looked in people's eyes, like who were walking around in public voluntarily wearing them, not in those situations where you had to, but like voluntary, and I'm looking in their eyes and I'm like, you can see the fear. It's like they actually believe all this crap. It forced me to realize that they're not where I thought they were. And unfortunately, the way that people responded to COVID forced me to completely rethink the whole situation here. It almost made me think, is it true what those memes say? Maybe waking up the sheep is not where the game is. Maybe the game is strategizing with the lions, waking up and being productive with the lions, and kind of thinking of the sheep as an afterthought. I mean, is it a waste of time for us to keep, trying to wake up the masses when it seems that only a small percentage are really interested in the truth in the first place? So once again, those are 3 closing ideas, but I hope we can keep this conversation going, because there's so much to say. We need to have a real election dialogue, as we come into this silly nightmare that is 2024. And once again, thank you, Trina, for hosting this.
You're very welcome. Matt, I'm going to go ahead, let you, and then I'll go, Matt, because I want to respond to some of the things he said also. Matt, come off mute, dear.
Hey, Bruce.
Yeah.
Still here?
Yep.
Okay. Screen share for a second. There's a drawing from 1776, and it speaks to the truth of history, which you just spoke to, Bruce. Have you seen this before? This is an art piece that was done in June of 1776, and you can see several Native Americans. Those were the Five Nations Confederacy in the Northeast states, all the way from the Western Pennsylvania, across upstate New York, down through New England, and into Canada along Ontario, Lake Ontario. Very large area of 5, then it became 6 nations, and they coexisted peacefully for 500 years in 1776. And they had a triune form of government: a chief, and then rules making group, and then another rules making group. It was very similar to what we used to have in our country. And this is something, truth telling to history. And I just wanted to show this to you guys.
We didn't see anything, Matt, so I don't know if you want
to
to
screen share.
No.
All right. Well, let me see if I can get it. Meantime, go ahead, Trina.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Bruce, to add to your points about the mass psychosis that we saw everyone come under with following the lines on the grocery store floor, driving in their car alone with a mask on. I still see people out when I'm out in certain areas that are wearing the mask, and you can just see the fear behind it. You can just, they really did it. The powers that be, the media, the mass hysteria, they really did do a number on people. And when I think about what we're dealing with, you've heard the old saying, they're not playing with a full deck when we talk about certain people. It makes me think about the populace today and what we're dealing with to try to come upon some of these really big issues we're faced with as a human race. And to think that we're going to be depending on some of those people is a little bit frightening. And the social conditioning, the social engineering is another thing we need to get out in front of if we can, if it's not, so far gone that we can't make an impact. But as far as who I want in my camp, it's going to be already the people that are free thinkers and the ones that are seeing things for what they are now. Because I honestly don't think, I don't know, I want to stay optimistic, but I have doubts that some people will ever be able to be captured or turned around. That shaken, slapped, whatever Mike was talking about earlier. Not into that whole violent thing, but we do, the violence thing. But we do need. I'm into slapping people, but we do need to something that will be a major shift and a wake up call. And just one last thing, when you were talking about history's been being destroyed before our very eyes. Modern day book burnings. I mean, the way things are being taken down that are of our history, including monuments, books off shelves. I mean, you name it, it's being dismantled. So we have to move it, people. Okay, that's what I have to add. Matt, did you want to try to have that up? I don't see anything but a bunch of monitors. You're going to need to clean that up, Matt.
This says your screen sharing that I'm looking at. Hang on. I guess it says you're screen sharing to me. So,
But mine says I'm viewing your screen. So I don't know if you can put whatever you have in the chat, Matt. That might be a little better. If you can't find your tab.
all right. Well, shoot. Wait a minute. I've got about 20 things open right now.
Does anybody have anything else to add?
Sure, I could chime in here real quick. As far as what you just said, as far as like not losing hope and getting restoring faith in possibly saving America, I think it's just basically getting back to basics. Like, it's really not that hard. It's very, very simple. All we've got to do is just, and a lot of people right now are coming forward. They're waking up. They're seeing this for what it is. I'm seeing people wake up now that I never thought would wake up. And they're asking questions. And I'm so happy to be in a place to where I'm not panicking, to where I can answer these questions in a definitive manner and not be putting anybody off like I did in the old days. I had a lot of passion in the old days. I was very like, oh my God, rah, 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 you know. Now it's like, okay, I got to rein myself in and realize what we're dealing with, and I need to stay calm through it. As upset as I am about it, I have to stay calm. So this has been like a meditative practice for me. But it's just basically getting back to basics, honoring our morals and values, honoring what humans need. We need a safe home that's not going to be being, put under like people warring back and forth over rights and should we go to war and should we spend our taxes on this or that. We need to know we come first. Our taxes go for restoring America and restoring the lives of Americans, our vets that are homeless on the streets that really need it. That's where our taxes need to be going, taking care of them. The people that are here already, closing the borders, having people that are competent enough to understand that that is a national security threat and that we need to pay attention to these things. These are very, very basic, like grade school basic. And it's gotten to a point where it's gotten so ridiculous that people are just like frantic and flying off the handle over these issues because they've forgotten the basics. The basics have been, it's like a rug under your feet that's just been pulled out. And people are going, uh-oh, they're up in the air going, what do we do now?
Okay.
Get back to those basics.
I agree, Ziola. Matt, if you can't find that, let's go ahead and stop the screen share because this is coming all through on the recording.
Okay.
Okay.
Kill it.
So if you can't
I'll
find
email
that,
it to you guys.
yeah, if you can find it and you send it to me, or if you can send it to me, Matt, I'll be happy to put it in the chat and make it a part of our record.
All right. Yeah, I'll do that.
the chat record. Sorry, you're having problems there, Matt. If I had had that in advance, I would have been
I
happy to
just thought of it
put that
based
up
on
for you.
what Bruce was talking about.
Okay.
Just
All right. So, well, if anybody else doesn't have anything to add, I think we're past our 90-minute mark now. We'll go ahead and say goodnight to everybody. Let me go ahead and want to just thank everybody again for being here to be a part of this program. And I hope everyone has a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. If you would like to help with any technical support, we could certainly use that. I don't know if everybody can gather by some of our recordings. We're doing our best to get through, but if anybody has anyone that has experience and would like to support us in that way, please have them contact me. And with that, I'll go ahead and play our outro here.